Welcome to tonight's lecture by one of our most distinguished alumni, and I would add probably most talented architect of our generation working today, Minsuk Cho. It's often said that the students who go on to do the best work are not always the students who were the biggest stars at school. Min, however, disproves that. In the 90s, it was impossible to open a copy of Abstract without seeing one of Min's amazing drawings or models there. Often you did not even need to open it, since Min probably holds the record number of covers featuring his studio work. After graduating from GSAPP in 1992, Min worked at Polshek & Partners here in New York, and then later at OMA in Rotterdam. Interestingly and unusually, Min did not immediately go on to launch his architectural world domination from Korea, but instead decided to return to New York to found Cho Slade with fellow GSAPP alum James Slade in 1998. In a kind of mythical way, Min and James really slogged it out in the New York trenches we all know so well. They were nominated for the MoMA PS1 Young Architects program in 2003, and within 5 years completed a number of award-winning projects, most notably the Pixel House and the Daljeet theme park in Haeri in Korea. In 2003, as the Korean projects were completed, Min opened his own office, Mass Studies, in Seoul. In the last dozen years, Minsuk has accomplished more than many architects do in a lifetime, completing buildings all over the world. In his native Korea, he has built the S. Trenyu Tower, the Boutique Monaco Tower, the Anne de Meulemeter shop, the Daum Building, Korea's answer to Silicon Valley, and recently had a mid-career retrospective exhibition before-after Mass Studies Architecture at the Samsa Museum of Art. In his manifesto for the firm, Min writes, "Mass Studies was founded as a critical investigation of architecture in the context of mass production, intensely overpopulated urban conditions, and other emergent cultural niches that define contemporary society." Clearly, Min has done just that, adding to our environment with buildings which are playful, polemical, and exquisitely designed inside and out. The work is aesthetically unique and specific, always changing and always hard to pin down. Min uses unexpected materials and engages in spatial experiments that take section to an extreme. This is clear in the Boutique Monaco building, where bridges connect different parts of the apartments, duplexes seem to arrive from nowhere, cross-bracing creates incredible effects from within. One of my most favorite projects is his children's playground sculpture, which is simply a concrete disc from which every imaginable shape, from pyramid to extruded ellipse, has been removed to create amazing play spaces. Most recently, with the Daum Building, he has taken on Kevin Roche and Eero Saarinen and reinvented the office park typology in ways neither Big's Google nor Gary's Facebook or Foster's Apple campuses have done. Min's involvement with the world at large does not shy away from an intelligent traversing of global political and cultural domains. In 2008, he created a big inflatable air forest in Denver for Dialogue City as part of an arts and cultural event which took place during the Democratic National Convention that nominated Barack Obama in 2000. And in 2010, he designed the Korean Pavilion for the Shanghai World Expo. But perhaps most indicative of his insightful combination of architecture's position at the epicenter of power, politics, and culture is the exhibition Crow's Eye View, the Korean Peninsula, that Min commissioned for the Korean Pavilion at last year's Venice Architecture Biennale. Conceived as a prologue for a yet unrealized joint exhibition of North and South Korea, what would be called the first architecture exhibition of the Korean Peninsula, the exhibition won the Golden Lion for the Best National Pavilion. I should also mention one of our own CCCP students, Ji-Ho Lee, worked as deputy curator for this exhibition, bringing us full circle back here to GSAPP tonight. And on this note, please welcome Minsuk Cho.
Thank you so much, Dean Andraos, for such a kind, long, extensive going through my resume and insights. Is it on? Can I do? It's really great to come back here. Although somehow I left the school 23 years ago already, Ken hasn't changed at all. Also, Richard, it always shocks me. But I never felt I left the school because I think you guys somehow maintain this engagement, although I'm completely the opposite side of the globe. So it's really to see all of you, almost exactly same people, it feels like. But they have different titles and and they all look the same. So okay, so this I have to run through my slides. This is my 13th year of my practice math studies after James, who's here, after Cho Slade. And I've been mostly purely focusing on the practice. And last year was a very unusual year because we have to do 2 shows. It was not exactly coincidental, but I kind of felt the need to kind of stop and look back in order to sort of move forward in a way, because the part of the world that I'm in is you could easily kind of trapped into this relentless sort of machine. So it's the first exhibition was our own show. Actually, this part came later. Started last November and then went on until 2 months ago, so two months and a half. And it was sort of an unusual, unexpected surprise because it's small, not small, as a gallery called Plateau. Usually, in most cases, we are actually a first non-artist were invited to this place to do a show. And one thing I liked about this was it's in this strange setting, like almost like a Park Avenue, high-rise towers, and then there's this KPF attachment started in the late 90s with the Rodin sculpture in this entry, what they call glass pavilion. Sometimes they have also artist installation there, but then this white cube inside. And I felt, which is nicely surprised, but one thing I liked about was actually, usually architects' exhibition is in a way is kind of an introverted setting or most specific type of people go. But this is where we can really engage maybe mass. So we like the fact that it was in this kind of unusual, awkward setting. And then one of the things they ask when they make this proposition for the invitation was that can you build this within this glass pavilion? Some of you have seen it 2007 with Joseph Grima, at the time Seoul Forum for Art and Architecture director. We worked together for this temporary structure out of 1,000 hula hoops and some steel. It went on to Milano. And it was very it was very awkward because it meant to occupy public territory temporarily and then somehow engage the people passing by and with some sort of a specific agenda and interact, maybe interfere. But it was in this space was quite very polished space with these 2 Rodin sculptures. So I had a 2-week given time to think about whether I should accept this proposition, and I accept this invitation after 2 weeks, and on the condition that this area, if usually they have a ticket office outside, and then when they walk in, that's where they check the ticket. But I told if they can change the ticket checkpoint, we're going to design it to inside so that this area becomes sort of a free, temporarily public area. And they were actually quite, they reacted that, and that's how we managed to do that. And of course, it's not just sitting pretty as an art object, and we kind of programmed it. But first time, this 2 Rodin sculpture was also open to public for free. Although you have to see through this hula hoop or somehow blocking it, but nevertheless, it was a quite well attended sort of side regular event we had. And the title of the show was Before After Math Studies Does Architecture. We're kind of stating the obvious, but math studies, a lot of people don't know what we actually do. That was partly the joke, but before after architecture narrative usually in most cases was a sort of beginning to an end. it's always you start out with this napkin sketches, this brilliant conception moment, and then ends with this complete, like, fresh finished construction, and Iwan Ban comes in and take picture. And that's how it's usually presented, and it's always this kind of a heroic, triumphant sort of role of architect, or tragic. It's usually just way too overdramatic. And especially when architects walk into this kind of a gallery space, which is designed for artwork, usually I think there are two modes. Like, they usually kind of adapt completely this grammar of aura making, some sort of with the spotlights, pedestals, and somewhat historicizing sort of a mode, or they become some sort of pseudo installation artist and sort of creating this real installation. And we didn't like usually the given two choices, and we try to come up with other alternative. And for us, it was also, we're not quite ready to do this retrospective thing. So it was, for us, it was somehow architecture as some sort of more like a verb instead of static noun, let's say. So that was architecture. That's what we came up with this title. And sort of engaging in various ways throughout the whole time. And also it was a way to examine sort of what happened once we finished. In fact, I'm quite take pride in myself having very good relationship with the clients. We become friends, and usually go through difficult times, but they're very comfortable calling me and about roof leaking and things like that, and also, and we're very responsive. There's a lot of Asians. That's actually a big change, right? I was the only Korean guy in my class, but now there are 50 Koreans, maybe. This is a Go game. You probably know, Baduk we call it, and it's only popular in Japan, China, Korea. This is kind of so far I like this analogy as part of our practice. You probably know, like, Duchamp was really into a chess game, and he kind of, after the peak of his career, artist career, he kind of got into almost national, the player, chess, become very professional, and he kind of was so grateful that he doesn't produce other wasteful things, and got into this pure, the process-driven, the better than art, which is a chess for him. But for me, the Go game is even, I think, more radical and beautiful, because unlike the chess, which has its hierarchies, right? Each pieces has certain capacity, which also differs. But Go game is actually like completely neutral by itself. The white stone, black stone by itself is completely means nothing. But really, depending on the situation, how it's located spatially, but also at a very temporal sort of conditions, then it becomes really significant. And I kind of I like that idea as a kind of a beautiful sort of a proposition of what we do, that it's actually by itself maybe not as significant, but it's really is about this archipelago of ideas, and how also I'm saying maybe we're white stones, the way we place things, and then the internal condition, and the black is the external condition that sort of defines and constantly creating dialogue with us. And the beauty of also Go game is actually, it's not as, right now, now it become more like a competition, and they have like a TV live shows of the significant players for hours and days and things like that. But it's actually, it meant to be form of kind of a communal, two-person meditation, and really high level of exchange. So it's really not winner and loser kind of a thing. And I like to think that way. And architecture, in a way, kind of responds to changing surroundings, and at times also, I'm showing some of the examples, not just architect and the surrounding alone, but also this building was facing each other, and with a 40-meter distance, with the forest in the middle. Also, it constantly have this kind of a relational sort of performance. This is first building we did with James, and this was Pixel House. It's 80 square meter, very small building for a family, and this was how it was published. And it's also not the daily cycle, but it's also, for us, this exhibition was important to revisit some of our early work and how it performs. So you can see now the building, the context completely changed, and it's actually, this is also when it was just built. And later, this tree is actually their grandfather buried, the urn buried. So it become more charged with the other kind of significant. And also there's other ways of also being charged over time. This is the artist studio. Later, it become that. And it's her husband, who is a recording engineer. And their living room also become this production space. This is another project, and the last project that I did with James. It's just a Daljeet theme park, and this initially, it was a very unusual premise for us to imagine the person who reside is this 6-year-old cartoon figure named after strawberry in Korean, Daljeet. It's basically the Korean answer to Hello Kitty, and it's like this building-size Hello Kitty land kind of a thing. And so we got very excited. This is James and Hayes' daughter and son. They're now adults already. And we got very excited, and actually this model even went to Venice Biennale 2004, and somehow we got recognitions, and then 2004 was completed, and this is how it was published. And then something over the 10 years, something happened was this company, the mother company actually was a fashion company, which is very also well respected as an art patron. But then you can imagine over the last 10 years globally, H&M, Zara, Uniqlo completely killed the local brand. And then they kind of, by the time we got there, it was actually not functioning anymore, because they sold that brand into other big corporation. And then somewhere in between, our client took interest in actually farming. And it become sort of somewhat gloriously mutated, and it's all organic fertilization and all. So actually, it's one hand is tragic, but it's also it's sort of a performance. And it's actually quite shocking that 13 years before somehow we have something to do with it, but we don't feel guilty. But it gives a hope, and we're actually discussing what to do with the space, because they're quite attached with this space, and maybe they can convert this interior into something. So in this exhibition space, basically this gray area was a glass pavilion with the ring dome in the middle. And then when you walk in, there are two spaces, white and black. One is before and the other one is after. And once you come in, this is a little ticket check area that we designed. And then you can either choose one way or the other. And it's actually a cyclical loop that we created. So the before is a room look like that. And it composed of 32 tables. It kind of had this labyrinthian, but this is like a constellation of different ideas and models. But it's also, we wanted to capture different process of this, what we call the before process. So the first site visit, Amale, Dan, Eric, we are all here. You remember Odor's 100. Sometimes it's completely, the given clue is this chalk dust number that we picked from lottery, and that's the context sometimes that we dealt with. And then the opposite extreme is this building that is the largest building we've done so far. It's not only we have to deal with this really dense 1,000% FAR, high dense condition, but also around it, but within the inside, the site also is already, there's a structure that we have to deal with. We often have to finish somebody's leftover food, basically. So, and then of course there's a client brief, which is a client-side performance. And then this is, for the exhibition, I usually don't keep any sketches because you look like that. It's usually the combination of digital and hand-drawn. And this is dormitory for 600 people, students that we're just about to build. And somehow over the year, because we knew that we'll be having an exhibition, so we kind of gathered it and we kind of end up having 2,000 of these images. And then, of course, these are the debris come out of that. And of course, and then we're getting more serious and technical, and this is another structure project. It's also building has to perform as a sort of as a structure, and then detail level. So somehow our exhibition, typically you come in and you see the, sort out by buildings, but also we, each building somehow captures this process. So that was this kind of quite complex. And then there's a site supervision part, and we had also formwork section. And then at this moment, the construction worker become the performer. And then the building is emerging during the process. And we kind of sort of divided that point of threshold between before and after to that. And it looks like that. And it was something between library and supermarket and also exhibition and few other functions in there. And the after room is something else because it's, we call it just black room, and it's composed of entirely other people's work, but about our work. Because architects often get confused with the representational work of photographers and as if this is their work. Of course, it's one slice of reality, maybe. But for example, the Korean photographer Kim Yong-kwan, sometimes he does better looking image than what we have done with some special lens and things. Lee Wan-ban also has amazing superpower to attract these voluntary performers, which has nothing to do with this IT, the Korean Google company buildings. A lot of people thought this was a military academy in Seoul. And also, again, Yuan Ban, this is all not staged. Somehow, with his smile and appearance, people just do that. But also in this part, we are also showing these some kind clients sharing their also maybe even more beautiful pictures, their life, what has happened. And this was also opportunity to revisit some of our attempt how successful or pathetic has it become. This is what we call social bridge. It's a 14-story office tower. It has this kind of in the middle is a sort of bridge-like part that we are hoping to have some sort of social interaction. And of course, we got a lot of complaints when we visited there also. But then also, surprisingly, there's some also building becomes like a backdrop for some unexpected fashion magazines and even some assassin thriller movie setting. Or this is the K-drama. I think it's very popular. If you're a Chinese student, might know about this one. 별그대, I know, the star or something. I didn't see, but. And of course, it's also part of this daily liberal newspaper satire about this political scandal, corruption story because he owns one of these units and so on. So it's also how, once it goes out of the world, our babies, how what they become, and how it's also consumed, but also performs, and sometimes spectacular more than we ever imagined, unexpected ways, sometimes also disappointing. But we try to sort of look at what we have been doing, so that was our kind of interest in order to move forward. And this black room is also, it's all basically images and moving images, and there's lots of moving things, so it's actually a very sonic environment. It almost feels like a 40 different sort of theater, and it's actually almost city-like experience. And then this is where you have to choose in between, and you can see something on the floor. This is a catalog, brochure. Everybody gets this for free, this 8-page thing. And we have done about 150 projects. It's, we've been quite rigorous doing about 12 projects a year. On my end, basically, I have to come up with every month's new project. I eat 2 meals a day. I smoke 2 packs of cigarettes, and I do it every month. It was quite regimented. It was actually shocking because it wasn't deliberate because this is how much I can take, but I'm hoping to slow down like 11 a year and then maybe 1 a year as I get, and more focus. But we selected carefully 69 of projects here they're looking at, and 39 of them are actually built. So it's 1 out of 4 we have built. And so what's shown there is maybe 2/3 is built project, and then the rest is unbuilt project, which is also we care about. And this is what we did. It has a code, and it's very important because it's it's a design year. 00 is 2000, year 2000, and the A would be within the same year. The first one is A. Apostrophe is, for some reason, is completely changed from original design. And then we did all this aborted babies, the red numbers. So again, the Go game idea, and this is how the notation happens, right? So when there's a big game, next day the newspaper, you have this thing, and people who knows how to read this, basically it gives you all the stories from 1 to how these two sort of interacted, and so on. So this, in a way, we try to kind of capture that. You have some red numbers here. These are the section for lost competition books, so unbuilt, and so on. And also, again, this, in a way, we kind of present it as a sort of a oneness. It's all interlinked together, so that it's not as just one few highlighted projects, but we are very interested in also how this happened and how this one idea kind of developed and mutated or sometimes crossbreed and so on. And also the black room also has its own constellation with the date and some of other important elements, informations. And when you look at this, the brochure carefully, you'll see also small, these pictograms. And these are the 21 pictograms, and these are actually what we did also was look into what kind of ideas that we have developed, and it's almost like a Chinese hieroglyph that we developed. So, and also we kind of ordered in the order of frequency. So it was actually really surprising. And some of them, these are not like, some building small scales, we've done like almost very diagrammatic things, but I think it's, at certain that you can only do, and at a certain, it's not that reductive, and usually it's a combination of many ideas each project has. Anyhow, in terms of idea, we actually were very surprised that the most common idea, more than like 22 projects among 69 was courtyard variations. And then there's also, it's not only about building typology, but there's some social content, collective intimacy. There's a Jindogu architecture, sequel, and there are various sort of, sometimes it's about the manner how we deal with the program, the projects. It's all kind of very heterogeneous sort of ideas. And so this is part of the catalog brochure that shows in order the most frequent ideas and basically how to sort of tap into these pictograms. So courtyard, of course, it started from this old traditional typology, but I think it's a universal. Every culture, almost every time, has courtyard. But Korea, because it's so mountainous, so there's sometimes that we dealt with this kind of a sloping condition. This is a dormitory for resort for workers, for 100 people. And it's every unit is, every floor is actually accessed directly from the, you can sort of see, from the ground condition using the slope, but then they have these tiered courtyards. And of course, we deal with this density, so there's a lot of vertical courtyard explorations. And then this is the more recent courtyard that we're actually just about to build this. You saw it as a sketch. It's a 600 people dormitory with the student facility. It's actually from the campus side is above, and it appears as if it's a 3-story building, but it's actually 10-story because there has a 26-meter drop, and then there's an existing road below, so it kind of crosses like a bridge. And then in the middle is where the major structure happens with the hanging slabs, with the giant trusses, and that's a common, but this is a unique because it's a courtyard in plan, but also in section vertically. So it opens up these common areas, canteen and also the meeting room, the 2 floors. It's one of the section. And also in plan, this was another sort of a part of what we call the matrix studies, but in a way we have this Hertzbergian agenda of no corridor situation because most dormitories are very unpleasant place for just passing, but we actually create a quite generous social space, almost like a living room for floors, sometimes as many as 100 people. And this was also, this is probably the biggest the model in the show, and we use as also the endoscope study, so people can explore with these small cameras and take picture and save it. Okay, and then this one is actually last 21st, only appears 3 times. It's that movie Jackass. That's the reference, and it's again this project. It's a type of project that we had a quite critical attitude. In this case, it's a bigger phenomenon, because I think we've done like 3 projects, which is about bigger, faster, cheaper, which was a Korean pavilion for Expo, but instead of just shying away from it, but somehow challenge it and find an opportunity to actually do something. In this case, bigger usually means oversimplified, sort of a streamlining everything. But what if we create some heterogeneity in proportion to the size of the building, which is about 55,000 square meters. And it was actually somehow because of the good moment. It was very time specific. It's a good. Also, it happened to be the most expensive land. So this developer client allowed us to actually do that much. But so there's basically no repetition in plan, and its units has probably the most severe amount of diversity. So basically, we show this model with the 49 interior package set, matching color, and don't try this at home. But one positive, we actually almost literally bankrupt from this process, but client made us so much money that they gave us more money, and then we are able to finish it. But good aspect of that was we created a lot of jobs for young architects in a way. So. And then there's also pure geometry about this circle obsession. We kind of realized that we've been doing a lot of circles, this one apparently so. And then this one came as a sort of another attempt. Ada, we are next door neighbors, yeah, for the Anyang Public Art Project. This one is entirely made out of arcs, but this is also one of my favorite detailed drawings because that's all you need. But it has so much very specific intelligence about how much you can bend with a certain thickness of pipe, and of course and then it also somehow has this ergonomic quality to it. And then we also did this. It was a one-time 8-day only City Hall Festival, hosted something like 6 million people, something like that, over 8 days of time. It's probably the largest chandelier, if you call this as a chandelier. We collaborate with the Realities United, some of you know, based in Berlin, with the Media Facade team. It was all very light tensile structure. And then also this circular structure with all sorts of different shapes or complete monolith. So in a way, I think it was kind of a frustration against also dealing with this very tight box situation, which is this, domino variations. It's about the high-rise density, and intention was creating some sort of a small gap, some room to breathe, to meet socially, and so on. Time specific, Korea is average expectancy of building's life is 30 years, which is problematic. It should change soon, but this we got down to sometimes we accept. I mean, this one is actually a sketch I did for this dance performance, the set I designed, probably the shortest time span for 1 hour. It's almost every few seconds is sort of addressed in that. But then Shanghai Expo Korean Pavilion was although it's a large building, but it was a 6 months only event. So we had a come up with the best way to recycle everything and also use the resources sensibly and so on. And we surely did that. We were the cheapest pavilion among those large pavilions per square meter. This one is also, we kind of developed this tendency. It's a Belgian fashion designer, Anne de Meester. And at this moment, it was 2007, we were exploring with this very tight, super dense maximum FAR situation. But this was a small building and it was a shop. And we explored this formal structure. But then almost same year, we had this Denver Obama presidential candidate acceptance occasion invited as some sort of a public installation art. And we did this sort of inflatable arches. And it actually sways with the wind. So it's kind of, and then somehow it developed into this Daum project, which is, I think it allows us to also think of it in a more systematic way. So this sort of a formal structure with this very specific quality can be assembled, and actually it become very divergent sort of a space-making tool. It's quite simple as an idea. And for the exhibition, we even sort of produced the toy for that. So actually, it was a good babysitter for architects who brought their kids. And then we had this other project, which is sort of a sister of that, which also deals with this sort of a formal quality. Somehow shamelessly deal with this overhang, which was kind of abandoned Korean sort of element for a while by this box camp. And then we call this section from domino to domino. And this is more recent project, which we're just finished. It was very simple office, square plan, 16.5 meter, which is quite a long span for concrete structure. So what we did was we shifted grid, so it became 12 meter with a 3 meter cantilever. And then the structure is actually below, and the air plenum for floor, access floor, what we call, is only you can have that on the periphery. So you can actually carve into it. So it become a quite simple, column-free office space with a separate core. And then you get this from outside it's quite simple, but then you get this sort of a surprise inside. And I think it was a very simple project, but somehow without this kind of other exploration, we went further from this dense city and more pastoral condition, we are allowed to sort of explore the more freedom. Somehow we came back to city and we were able to do that. So this exhibition also, portion of that deals with this sort of a section. And then after part also somehow we kind of compose this kind of a constellation. Okay, how much time I have? Okay. Found condition. There are found forms. Sometimes you have to follow this Hugh Ferris sort of obligation. But then what we discovered, this loophole, was actually on this side, it's a north side, it doesn't cast more shadows. As long as you don't have a window, you can actually project out, so it doesn't become simple pyramid. So it was a 10-story building, 99 tiny units there. And so that, and this one is also purely driven by zoning envelope. But then not only found forms, but also found space. This was another project that we'll have to finish also the other person's work. And this, typically in Korea, so many mountains, you get this sort of retaining wall situation. And usually it's not addressed and become like this back side of the building. But we kind of turned it into a major feature. So we made this retaining wall occupiable. And it became a quite pleasant place to actually cross a bridge and actually hang out. It's part of the restaurant. Or sometimes we found, it's like a found material, found pattern. It was another public art project. We are two person, us and this Korean artist, Choi Jung-hwa. He's a very well-known friend as a pop artist. And he's like, oh, I'm going to make this giant flower. And so I told him, we don't need two arts. I'll just make a base. And basically, we create this sort of a pedestal, but made out of rubber, so it's actually much softer to sit in, so it becomes much more discreet. It's a very simple, extremely low-budget project. And then maybe this is another thing about structure expression, silent acrobat. We also develop certain tendency that we have this kind of a very radical in structure, but somehow expression is almost very calm and dull, almost pointless. But then, of course, architect can understand that. And this is also but come out of also side condition that we have to create this basement gallery, and this triangular beam wall is actually supporting almost half of the weight of the structure in order to allow the required parking, the clearance. So basically, these are the ideas that sometimes it has, I think the certain project has as many as 8 of those pictograms overlapping. So we can sort of identify this charge point. And then lastly about this exhibition, we did this one wall, which is all planned 1:50 scale, not all of them, maybe 22, 23. And then also section all in one scale from very tiny to big. And I really recommend if architect, any of you have a opportunity of using a given like 7-meter tall wall, which is this wall is, it's the most informative thing because it really blows your mind because you're always limited to A0, A1, but then you actually see Pixel House next to these big towers and how much charge is small. I mean, it's really I think it was for me it was the most useful sort of exercise. And then lastly about this exhibition is about this weekly event. And we had, I think architect's role is, in majority is actually listening others. So I was just listening, and sometimes we even brought some really exciting musician, amazingly noisy musicians, and some of the collaborators, intellectuals, poet. He's an amazing writer, structural engineer. He was the before collaborator, and then the Seo Yeon-suk, which has been long collaborator he's a filmmaker and also an artist. And then his sort of finale was this great performance artist, Eunmi's wonderfully absurd and festive moment. That was like a last final Saturday. And then Sunday, I somehow had to do this impromptu thing for like 5 hours because I felt that there were so many great questions that I want to get asked more. So actually, it was set through. People just come in and out last 5 hours. It was from like this amazing. The 2 girls were there, like elementary school sisters. They sat through the whole time, like taking notes, and also grandfathers. They make this amazing its ideas and questions, and it was really, for me, it was the most useful thing. Okay, and then now I have to do Korean Peninsula part. You probably know by now that probably Ram was here. The premise unusual thing was this modernity over the last 100 years. And this image was what Ram first showed more than 2 years ago at the press conference. I think it was a brilliant provocation. Like it was saying, 100 years ago you can look like that. Now it all look like Chicago. And I just came from Chicago, first visit. And but of course it's partly true, but I think every country, the participated 66 country had, but it's reductive, and then that's when the story starts. And for me, it was actually, if it was only 50 years, it would be a completely different story. Because, but 100 years ago, Korea was one country under the colony of Japan. So if we miss out the north part, it's kind of missing out the half the story. So I actually propose what we call Plan A. Actually, I simultaneously propose two as a backup B. The first one is the first architecture exhibition of Korean Peninsula. And of course, at the time, was a new leader just started it. Also, South Korean leader also started almost same time, the lady president. And this matter with the North Korea is always so sensationalized and easily ridiculed. And we thought maybe through architecture, through the window of architecture, we can come up with a different kind of narrative. But also, so the Plan A become involved with a lot of traveling. The first place I traveled was Vienna, because I read about 2010, Peter Noever, then director of Museum Angewandte Kunst, Mark. He brought this significant collection of the National Museum of DPRK, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and it was quite controversial, but I think it was a seminal and really brave thing he did. And so I went, he kindly asked, he accepted to meet me, and then he immediately delivered my letter directly next week to North Korean ambassador based in Vienna. But then we didn't hear anything. And then it sort of ended with, this is the North Korea tip, and this is the border between North Korea and China. And this red region is the Yanbin, which is the Korean minority, so Korean-speaking Chinese people who has lots of business and works in North Korea, but I can also communicate. In fact, a lot of South Korean architects were there because they had this evangelist, a Korean-American leader started this university almost 20 years ago, which is the first private university in China. And then 5-6 years ago, he started this Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, which is one of its kind now. It's only 200 people only, and so on. So it was, in a way, I was also a desperate attempt to see the possibility, and only to learn that in this climate it's really not possible, because the tension was going very high, although we had a very brief 10 years of what's called sunshine policy, the détente mode, until 2005 or so. So this was what we can look at from North Korea, from China to North Korea. It's only 50 meters away, which is very different from 4-kilometer thick DMZ. So Plan A basically was involved with different ambassadors, like Italian ambassador, so European country who has a diplomatic ties to both countries. They are very kind helpers, and they were very enthusiastic. And everything I do, I cannot directly contact with North Korean in Korea legally now, but I can indirectly contact through third-party agent, mediators, but also I have to report to a unification ministry, and they were very supportive. So when even at the end, I got so desperate, even Rem also wrote a letter for us toward the end. Anyhow, but it was a kind of strange process, because typically when you curate a show, by the way, I'm not a really curator, just only second time did that, but the way we did was, usually typically I think when you curate a show, you have some kind of a thesis, and then you have these materials that kind of goes with this framework. And in our case, because we have such a no access and not so limited, limited materials, and I was just randomly just gathering. And it was very, but actually the Chie is here, but Chie was one of the very important role as assistant curator, because she highlighted this amazing Korean American or Korean New Zealander, Canadian, who's actually, they're all in the East Coast. They teach Yere Seo from Cornell, and then also Im Dong-woo from GSD, who has this exciting firm called Proud. And then there's Dong-se Kim, who was also professor here last semester, I think last year, urban design, who's a New Zealander nationality. And I think somehow this new generation, I think generation also has this kind of what do you call it, red complex. is so experienced a very severe Cold War situation and so on. But I think also the distance also helped them to actually look at these the serious matters that deserve to be looked at. So there was some systematic knowledge that was being built up, and in this case, I'm showing Im Dong-woo's work. He published a second book about North Korea. And what I discovered as soon as I become commissioner, it was that the Korean pavilion had this incredible story that it was the last pavilion at the Giardini, 26th pavilion. It was, they planned to have this centennial 1995, and they want to build another pavilion, last pavilion, to celebrate centennial. Of course, there were China, Argentina, there are many other countries lined up to get that position. But this was Namjoon Paek's brilliance. Minsuk Cho was interviewed. He's an architect. He was brought in by Namjoon Paek that he told at the time then Mayor Massimo Cacciari. Some of you probably know this important intellectual, the Gramscian tradition. Namjoon Paek said, if you give Korea to this pavilion spot, we will use it together with North Koreans. So according to Kim Seok-chul architect, Massimo Cacciari become very excited, almost become much more loftier thing, and maybe dreaming about the Nobel Peace Prize through this or something like that. So things got quickly turned around. And it could have happened because Kim Yong-sam, then Korean president, got also agreement with Bill Clinton to visit North Korea in 1993. So everything was actually much more peacefully evolved, it could have. But then quickly, founder of the North Korea, Kim Il-sung, died 1994. So everything turned cold, and of course, two countries in this kind of a semi-crisis situation. So it was never addressed. So in a way, I didn't know about it, but it was something that Namjoon Paek bankrupt to Massimo Cacciari and the city of Venice somehow, because over the last 20 years, nobody was dealing with that. So, and then when you look at this plan of this thing, it's actually a nightmare to exhibit, because it was actually, there's like 18 feet square, what was used, the brick building at the time, as a toilet. And then they kind of grabbed it with this almost glass pavilion, because they were they tell the committee, very bureaucratic, I heard, that, oh, it's going to be glass pavilion, so it's not going to block the lagoon, and it would be almost invisible. And it's squeezed between Japan and German pavilion. And it's almost this become like a metaphor itself, because Korea also is facing water, lagoon. So this is South Korean side, and then this is the land squeezed between the superpower countries, who's more square, rectangular boxes. And this building has 19 corners. I counted it. But we see inside and outside, it's like 38 corners. We use entire corner almost as a sort of a machine to tell the story. So it has this amazing moment. And see, that's a corner. This is the toilet building. And then we even use the roof structure, the skylight. And another thing was interesting prologue. We titled Crow's Eye View. It's Lee Sang. He was born in 1910 when Korea was colonized by Japan, and until end of Second World War, so 1945. And he only experienced the colony Korea, never experienced the division. But he was trained as an architect. He was a brilliant, young, talented fan of Le Corbusier and Charles Perrinand. And there was that time. This building no longer exists, but I think it was sometime in the 1920s, Japanese headquarters, designed by German architect, together with a Japanese architect. At that time, it was Asia's largest building. It was 20 years ago, it was taken down. But he was working for Japanese headquarters as a government architect. After 3 years, he gave up, and he was, I think it was 22 or 23, and then he became a poet. And he published this Crow's Eye View, this strange poet. It was a series poem supposed to be for 30 days for daily newspaper. Amazing that you have this kind of avant-garde poet at the time published. Which was, people were complaining so much because it's so abstract. Of course, it was very much influenced by Dadaist. I think there's a term for it, like concrete poetry, something like that. And this is a translation of it. So this serial poem never published until number 30, but up to 15. And poem number 1, sometimes it comes with the diagrams. Number 5. Number 4 was actually quite amazing for me because he's as if he's the head physician, Isang, and then he wrote a prognosis. And for me, just the way I read it simply is like world is flipped and then somehow split it, cracked in the middle. I mean, he didn't experience a division, but that's what modernity was. And then 3 years later, he died of tuberculosis and become like a myth. So this again become like an interesting, almost appropriate metaphor for this whole process. And also, and then this become the bird eye view. It's, a lot of people thought, why cross eye view? Because Chinese character almost similar, one stroke missing. So people thought it was a misspell when they saw the newspaper. But it was, of course, it was a deliberate. Because when you see, this is a hieroglyph, it looks like a bird, and then it's like a without eye, one stroke missing. Again, the bird eye view is very much the modernist gaze. I think the Corbusier and the airplane, people look down and become like a god. And then this crow, I think, in my interpretation, is because crow is so black and it looks like this bird don't have eye, sort of buried, but so it's not recognized, this sort of subjectivity maybe. So, and also it's a bird eye view is, maybe it presents a universalizing sort of a gaze, then the crow's eye view is something else, something much more specific and particular. So we actually, the skylight was a perfect place for that, looking down through it. And then it became like almost inspiration for our graphic designer, Sergey and Min, who also did our own show, Before After. And so it deals with the informal, reconstructing sort of phase, every day. Also apartment, one is about these people with this communist ideology versus the capitalist middle class, but the typology is exactly something that we agree. There's some lot of also the informal we deal with, city. And then of course there's a heroic part about these two cities, how it developed and how similar and different it is. And there's some amazing moment in architecture. And also it's shockingly, there are a lot of similarities, and one comes before and after, influencing each other. So this is like a quick flash. And then one is maybe about this sort of individuality, the architect Kim Soo-gun, and then the other one is about collective. And also we found those comparable fantasies, fantastic. And also the border condition we dealt with. And this is a Soviet border that shows 2 countries and then border, although it's most heavily armed and dangerous border, but it's actually, she kind of mapped out all the political entities and the international organizations like UNESCO and all that, UN, and then also the religious groups and economic interests and NGOs and so on. So it's actually, there's a possibility of a transgression and so on. And this was a picture that we got from Kim Soo-gun's wife. She's still alive, Japanese woman. And she told me about this amazing story of Kim Soo-gun. When they met in 1980 UIA conference, there was no and South Koreans there, and he stood up all of a sudden and let's sing Arirang together. So let's culturally be united. And then after that, he was sort of called upon from Korean CIA, but he was released quickly. So, and then there's also artists like Kang Ik-jung had done these proposals. Since he's based in New York, Korean American, he can go to North Korea, and actually he's quite seriously been doing that over the last 15 years to do something through his art and so on. So I think I kind of went overboard a bit too much. So I'll just, actually there's more details about that, but I'll just go to the end part because I kind of knew that would happen. So sort of we looked at all these things that we show. Basically, there were quite extensive number of people, 29 persons. There are, in terms of item, there are 400 different things. The nationality-wise, there are 14 South Korean, and then non-Korean, of course, they're the one who's able to go to Korea and do the work as a mediator or agent. There are photographers, filmmakers, collectors, and then 25 of them still alive. And a lot of them are actually non-architect or urban planners. Majorities are actually painter and different people. So it was almost like this epic scale story, but made of these fragments almost that resonates with this crow's eye view, sort of serial poem in a way. And including all the writers is about 39 people, so quite large. And you can see this each protagonist somehow starting from 1914 until now. And of course, up to here is a Japanese period, and then you can see this clearly the two states, divided states, how it evolved in one image. And then we kind of trace all these people's trajectories also. So there's a temporal one, and then there's the spatial one, and it pretty much touch upon every continent. And my plan A was actually stay within this tiny peninsula, just somehow make a connection and do it ourselves with the two flags. But somehow become a lot bigger story. So for me, it was actually, opening was very important because I think a lot of money that I fundraised also got into flying everybody to the Venice, because there are people from different places and they never knew each other, but somehow I think it created a great network and bonding experience with lots of flags, like almost like a fake wall flags that we created. There are 20 different flags. And then somehow this thing kind of evolved, and then many people visited, including Kofi Annan and politicians. But in August, he's Alessandro Belgiojoso, one of the photographers who we featured there. And he was called upon the North Korea ambassador based in Rome, and he wanted to see the show. So it was only 2 days' notice, but if I had more time, I would have just flown there and just give him my sort of docent role. And the lady, she's a South Korean woman who's been there as a manager, and that's his secretary. And there's a lovely daughter. She's a minor, so I kind of covered it, but she's a beautiful girl. They have a very family sweet moment. Proud father showing, and he was, according to Alessandro, the ambassador was very impressed by how well balanced, which was what we wanted to do, because this subject was so easy to provoke and sensationalize, but it was really like a tightrope situation. And then months ago, we had a homecoming show. The house speaker came and spoke, but become something. And this was Kim Soo-gun's work, which also we feature heavily in the show, but this part we didn't feature. So we're quite happy with the flags. But it's completely opposite. It's a square and no natural lights. So we have to redesign it. It become more of a linear sort of a situation. But then we made a replica of that original toilet structure. So again, going back to before and after, this doesn't end somehow. And next week, when I go back, I have to meet Italian ambassador who's actually going to North Korea, and we want to talk about something. And another thing is this show will come to New York, I think, in early September. So keep you posted somehow. Tina Kim Gallery, actually. Yeah, that's a Florian and Zing design we renovated recently. But this Korean gallery also wanted, somehow it's like, oh, there's nothing to sell, but somehow they thought it was very meaningful thing to do. And they have this really new, nice space designed by Soil. So looks like we're talking about, tomorrow I'm having a meeting, but so I'm gonna end this. Sorry I dragged too long, but thank you so much for being attention. Thank you.
Thanks, Min.
Thank
And
you.
I'm joined by Eric Bunge, who you all know, I hope. Thanks, Min. That was really amazing.
Thank you.
Also, I remembered you came to Princeton. When was it? I think it was 2010. And it's amazing to see the evolution. I was thinking about few architects have a kind of name that isn't their own name, that is so actually descriptive of what the practice does. Mass studies. I was thinking about this notion of studying and this kind of absolutely relentless, iterative sort of process you seem to engage in, and the notion of mass is never about kind of surface, and it always has this kind of incredible depth. And also was thinking about the difference between the kind of diagram and the pictogram, and the kind of indexing that you did for the exhibition. These pictograms weren't like kind of contents diagram of operations. They're really almost characters for the projects. It's almost like the character of an intervention rather than a diagram of an operation, and that seemed like a very interesting difference. And bringing this sense of narrative and again depth and a sort of personal take and a lot of pleasure and excess also. And also just tying a little bit to this kind of pleasure and excess I felt in Venice. Just walking into the pavilion, there was just such an unbelievable richness, and every drawing was just exquisite. And then I was thinking about the your Dada poet, and thinking that you also operate a little bit like that with these montages that are not commentaries. They're really just a sort of layering of intensity. So I did feel like the pavilion in Venice had the same kind of unbelievable thickness in the work. And so, but it's so anyway, those were kind of my thoughts, and I wanted to ask, this kind of moment of stopping that you described, and in terms of this hinge before, after, and presumably it's also, well, what comes after, and do you, how is it registering for you now? You're not going to go back and say, well, in this case we're going to apply pictogram number 5, but
it's never like that. Huh?
Yeah.
This pictogram is also developed. It's not like I have this theory and then I have to impose, but it was for me. Although this whole logical seriality is important, but it's always this kind of a feedback of also analogous leaps, the process of discovery in a way. It's always has been that way, and it's sort of, we started this, I think earlier. We didn't even. Sometimes we call it like just pure intuition, and we just make something, and we call it like a meteor. Like there's no, it's not part of constellation. And I think often good Go player does that. Also, they just throw stone somewhere, like almost looking random, but then you start to build up something. I should have some proof to support it, but there are certain processes like that. Yeah, and but we were never about, because it's, as you mentioned, the study is a very important part. It was very, one thing I didn't bring back to Korea from what I learned in America was a professionalism. Is that we are we're determined to be a student, because the situation that we're dealing with is a constantly change, and there's no, you can't really apply all knowledge to it, and you have to always sort of
be in a kind of iterative process.
Yes, because
I'm interested in the sort of tightrope, as you mentioned just recently, that you need to walk between, as I see it, the sort of the messiness of the complex context that you described in one text as an operational complexity or context that you tried to engage, with the clarity of the work that also maybe is legible now through this sort of crow's eye retrospective.
Mm-hmm.
Because your name, mass, I mean, you've referred to the idea of mass as kind of like complex, or the multitudes, or in a sense populist as well, like engaging, with a broad context. And at the same time, you've managed basically a project a month. I don't know why you didn't do a calendar, actually, rather than for your show. But there's a kind of a braveness and exploratory aspect to the work that I'd like to understand the sort of context actually that you're working within. I mean, look at Korea, 13th GDP. Stands out, second in education, but also fifth in ease of doing business, right? Apparently, it's so, which is kind of incredible. But so you're an amazing architect. You're producing so much, 69 projects that are, in this show. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe to our audience too, like what, having practiced here too, what is the operational complexity, in Korea as opposed to here, and how do you insert yourself within that to create this kind of clear, legible work?
I didn't know about these recent statistics. You know better than me, but one thing I actually skipped in the lecture, I just took out, among many things, from 500 to 400 slides. Was one of the backdrop was over the last 20 years, one of the really drastic change was up to early 90s, we were like, for 3 decades, 2-digit economic growth. That's, I think, what's called fast growing, like big tiger, Asian tiger. And then it started to drop, not economically, but I was showing this graph, a portion of the construction industry. And from that time, 20 years ago, and now it came down 1/3 of that. And now we are actually becoming more like a Japan, I think, in the 90s, early 90s, post-bubble situation. Especially, we didn't know because it was sort of like there's one abrupt situation in 1997, and then went up, and that's when it was like when I was starting, so it looked good. But then I realized now it's really low. That when we thought we hit the rock bottom. So it's not. So for me, that's also now it's like a new condition, and it's like a generation after me. There's some of them are here actually dealing with that. So it's not that rosy anymore. And somehow, but for me, it's also even when we were actually in the upward situation, we were quite knew that something is coming, and it was. I kind of know my limits, so we didn't really we didn't grow, and actually we shrunk down. We went the opposite way, which was a good intuition. But
and most of your work is in Korea, right?
Mostly in Korea. I've been flirted by Dubai and India a few times, but I don't like this. Now we realize I don't really.
No.
It's also you got this mail order bride sort of. I'm sorry, this sounds very, but situation that. But I like what I do. Architecture is because it's really seriously you engage. Of course, there's a lightness and pleasure should come with it, but actually work itself is like takes years to do that, right? So it's actually you have this kind of two things together, and it's somehow maybe I haven't met the right situation yet, but we're building our first building in Hong Kong. China, there was one project just ongoing, but I have enough also diverse sort of conditions that's given within my own country. I'm quite happy with that.
I'm interested in something you touched on, Amale, which was sort of the next steps for Minsuk, and thinking about how this sort of moment of taking stock for you, the crow's eye view, I guess, that allows you to sort of, bypass the relentless machine, as you put it. And, it sort of manifested in the sort of formats that you're interested in. I mean, it's interesting that you didn't lecture about your work, you lectured about an exhibition, and the exhibition wasn't about the work directly, it was about, process, reappropriation of your work, and each project in a sense became another kind of project, right? Whether it's about how a site is engaged with or the publications and so on. So now, and then you've developed this sort of pictograms. So has this exhibition and this lecturing about the exhibition and all that, changed the work for you in the sense that can you see a kind of set of themes that were initially there, or have you abstracted from that some kind of manifesto?
I think it was a good the distancing to see the whole picture, what we have done, and for me the evaluation was very important. of course, by sorting out what to show, not to show, it's already there is a judgment, and some things we've done so stupid. But I think there are certain things. There also, it was interesting when we sort of sort out this exhibition. There's like this big circle of magazines and books. It was also ridiculous because we thought we were very hermetic, but somehow we got published a lot. But some of them are like we don't even know because it's like in the fashion magazines, and somehow they sent us. But it was also things that they value there is very different from what we think is very important. Certain project never been published, we think is very important. Things like that, this discrepancy is a very interesting one. And for me, as I said, not every building has to be the center stage, the Tom Cruise role in the movie, It's just, sometimes we ask to do this kind of blockbuster roles, but we're also right now, we're doing projects for friends, and I mean, but it's what's, for me, is interesting. Is more important.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting actually that all your work is in Korea. I feel like actually we're coming to a moment, I mean maybe it's just me, where the whole notion of the possibility of meaningful global practice in a sense of being spread across the globe is really problematic. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of incredible examples of dealing with the global condition with intense local understanding, and we're seeing kind of a new generation emerge that is actually really completely embedded within a kind of context, and I think it's a very different model. I'm really fascinated.
I like how something Minsuk wrote that I read this morning was that you kind of, amid the frictions of the 21st century, you were defined by kind of oppositions between past and future, local and global, utopia, reality, individual and collective, that you guys try to find sort of an alternate. It's sort of what you said before, when faced with two options, you always find a sort of a third. Is that something that's kind of actually generational too, in a sense? I mean, something you share with a lot of us, I think, too. Can you maybe comment on this sort of approach, which is maybe opportunistic and, I guess, nuanced?
Yeah, but I kind of reflexively react every time, because I think world is ever getting polarized, and it's often, most cases, it looks like it's like these two opposite choices, and I think that's one of the really driven thing that we've been sort of finding other way to deal with that. I think it's the Venice show was also one hand was that, and somehow that's been the modus.
Maybe we should open it up for questions.
Okay.
Is there a microphone?
Your design is incredibly intelligent, and you are dealing with various external dynamics related to political and social, economical vectors. I was able to witness inventive positions under specific and harsh situations, and it was like a constellation, as you said. And how do you manage this kind of diversity? And as an architect, how do you try to establish your own design attitude? Where are you heading for? Are you want to maximize your diversity, or?
It's I can answer that very simply, that because what we do is so tough, hard, as you know, so you have to really have fun with it. If you start to get bored with what you do, it's really no point being in this profession, so it's out of like sheer desperation. So I look for different things, and I think we should feel lucky, anybody who doesn't have to repeat things. Maybe Mies would think differently. That's me. Yeah. Because it's really amazing, because we had that kind of a thing. Every time we do something in this sort of a capitalist world, it makes you do the same thing, like ball throwing machine. Once you're good at it, once we are known, first we did this sort of a tower project, and then all of a sudden we had this moment of like every developer came to our office, and that's when I realized, that's how you grow to like 500 people firm. And I was completely just hiding away. Now exhibition is becoming like that. Exhibition was something. I was like, no, this was just a one-time.
Beware
only
what
thing.
you do. You're going to continue
I become
doing
like this
it.
curator, and this is like, no. I'll do my show every 12 years.
I'm
maybe.
looking at Barry.
No, it's Barry should do that, of course. Not me. No, it's just strange, huh? And then of course people. That's how the world runs. You become like a brand or something, and then they become really reductive, and the world is changing around so quickly, and then I don't know. It's just not fun anymore.
I saw a big hand in the middle there.
Okay.
Thanks for coming. The work that you produce, I can't seem to find a sort of correlation from project to project. I don't think there's a signature style that you necessarily have, which I think is beautiful and appreciate. I was curious if you could talk about what stood out to me, I guess, was the graphic framework that you have in the work. I was wondering if you could talk about your relationship with Silky M.
Silky Min.
Yeah.
And
how they're tying. It seems like they're tying the work together really well.
You're very well informed.
Yeah.
Because we kind of. It again sounds very reductive, but they went to Yale, this couple together with Michael Rock, and then they also had some Dutch influence, Eindhoven Academy, and that shouldn't be the thing because I think we kind of came back at the same time, and they did our first website, which is still running, but then we kind of stopped using websites, so it's sort of really not updated. But they significant things we did. We were working together, and they were they have agenda, and they again also have this. I think the tendency of not marrying to a specific visual something, and they were always driven by ideas. But then somehow you see their work overall. It's strikingly. I also one of those Ring Dong event that was a picture of him. We're talking and. Every time also they have this thing that they are out of this typical professional situation that they don't have to deal with client. They do something completely different. Like sometimes they, as a graphic designer, they deal with the taste or sound, of course, and then the even tactile things. So we've been actually also doing that. It's sometimes we have these sort of opportunities for exhibitions, and that's when we can kind of push. Something else we call it a Jindogu project. I don't know if you know this word Jindogu, Japanese useless inventions that never can be commercialized. I didn't explain that part, but they're always pleasure, and I have a great respect for them.
I'm just curious if you could talk more about the relationship between collaborating with graphic designers, being an architect, and how that relationship has been fruitful for your studio.
I didn't quite.
You mean that there's a kind of graphic quality to the work? Or?
Yeah. Like it seems like even looking at your sections and pattern, it seems like there's
could be. I mean they're exceptional because they're always. I always ask something and then they always don't listen and come up with their own thing, and I always see their work is like. Much better, so I don't say no never.
You're the ideal client, basically. Ideal client.
I am the in a way, but they are the ideal also collaborator. But I don't know. Are you architecture student or
educated in architecture, but
graphic also?
Graphic design.
Okay.
Smart.
Very good.
Jeffrey over there.
Jeffrey.
Can you talk a little bit about the design process, specifically, tapping into what Amale and Eric talked about? It's an amazing thing to see all of the projects together because it's neither like two opposing methods. It's not like on one hand, some projects are about crystallization of ideas, and then other projects are about diversity of ideas. Mm-hmm. and so in that way, it's not like Saarinen or something where each project is different from one another. But then within each project, that there's a consistent logic that's built through. It's more, like kind of Amale's saying is that it's an iteration of an idea that you see in each of the projects, whether it's a really complex project or a simple one. So, it's kind of like the thought process is sort of like, do you know this thing, this Zumba? It's a Zumba. It's a vacuum cleaner that's automatic. Once it hits a wall, it pivots and it goes into a different direction. So it's not directional. It's not like motivated. It just kind of is very. It moves around. It pivots and turns to find an alternative. So in this thought process of yours and how you design, because it is so iterative and involves so many different ideas, how do you talk about it in the studio? How do you talk to a design team when you're trying a number of different things? Are there specific kinds of adjectives or moves that you'll talk about with the team as a way to generate more ideas and to evolve the ideas?
It's a good question. It's at the beginning. I have to do a lot of things like draw, but I think we develop certain language, which it could be also. It's like a double-sided thing. It could be good or bad also. But these now have some few idioms or these pictograms that we can describe things, and again we try to. It's communication become much easier in a way, but. Yeah, we do that. Should we do Jackass again this time or not? Okay, let's not kill ourselves. And but I'm sure you have that too, right? It's just, and he developed its own sort of ideas and system of knowledge in a way. Huh? Because I think essentially we're, it's one of the very strong impulse we have is everything we can deal with it as a specificity. It's really also not that, it's like the scattered moves, dissipate moves is not enough somehow. And I was actually it's very hopeful thinking. We are not in that stage yet, but we kind of presented this is but one project, these 32 tables connected. And eventually somehow we want to kind of elaborate and grow into something new kind of totality or something. Without being totalitarian.
It occurs to me that there's one thing you didn't talk about, but somehow which you talked about in every project, which was structure. Whether it's the hoops, the hula hoops, or the perfectly located columns, or the sort of vocabulary, if you will, of all these vault types and so on. And yet you didn't talk about it explicitly, or the huge cross-bracing. Yeah. There's just a search for economy or expression, or just.
No, it was. I sort of touch upon that, but these big projects are so much with the domino as a sort of default, and then we kind of carve spaces and every possible way. But whenever we do this with the structural expression, of course, there's some room and room for freedom that we are allowed to do kind of things, and this it's just. It's about discovering these kind of opportunities, and also we have a really good Korean structural engineer. He's a good collaborator, sort of accidentally met, and he was actually not never had this kind of culture of a structural designer, but because it's Korea, the practice has been very sort of engineering, mass produce, literally. That kind of approach, but now he's become quite popular and he's actually only 6 people, and he's working with now lots of other interesting small practices, and so we're actually starting also very good way. But then I also have a good continue with the Rory McGowan, my old OMA days, and the Chinese experience during the expo. So although he's in Dublin, so it's also we have a bit of this global. Practice going as well. Okay.
I'm intrigued by 2 things. One is this figure that is kind of sort of. This figure whose name I can never quite get right. Is it Kim?
Kim Soo-gun.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
I mean, I think that this is a figure that has been completely ignored by the world
Yes.
to such an extreme degree. It's just
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
Of course, including myself.
Yes.
But that building you showed at the end is such an extraordinary building, and the whole space design thing, that whole story, and there are other buildings by him which are remarkable.
Yes.
He's never been. It's astonishing that he's never been recognized properly ever. You know, I think maybe in Korea, but outside, or anyway, not in recent years.
Yes.
The other thing is that in the presentation of this tension between the South and the North and this pavilion, at the same time, something sort of bewilders me, which is that, like, North Korea is a country that, in a certain sense, doesn't exist. As far as the media of the West is concerned, this country is misrepresented, doesn't exist. You know. And so in a strange way, I found the presentation as though it was sort of in the code, you know, coded. It was coded.
Yeah.
So that one couldn't really see it either. You know, you couldn't begin to build a picture of what it really. Well, what are the problems and the potentials of the future of the relationship between the two, and what is it anyway beyond the DMZ? You know, it's so distorted. We have such a distorted view of, you know, cleverly constructed distortion of what it is. You know, or anyway. Pathologically habitual distortion of what it is, you know. And in a funny way, your presentation, I find it very provocative, but then I still left like looking for this mystery. I can't even begin to touch it, you know.
You are really right about this mystery, and also because of the time, I didn't get to more specific items. It will take another hour, but in that book that I give you, it's also the Hyung-min, one of the curator, wrote about that, and we all agreed that actually during the process, more and more, we learn and gather obsessively about it, which is not a systematic knowledge, and it's more we kind of feel how ignorant of this subject in a way. So I think I kind of sense what you said. In that sort of a sentiment, and but also I mentioned in the book last part I wrote sort of like an open letter to North Korean architect, and it was basically I was telling what could have really happened if we hadn't met, and I think there has been it actually gave me a quite concrete idea of if this thing ever happens, hopefully near future. I mean, eventually it has to happen, I think. And then I kind of know what to do. Now I have a very specific idea what kind of subject we can kind of sort of start as a common ground. And so I'm hopeful actually. And it's actually also, I don't know if you know, maybe Barry knows, but during the process also I realized how hopelessly megalomaniac in terms of assessing my ability, given this 15 months or so time to prepare, have this plan A, because the German helpers, Goethe Institute, they gave me the book called Architecture of Two Germanys. Have you seen that exhibition between? Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that, of course. And then that exhibition happened 2003. Which means it took 14 years after these two states reunited, and two sides, scholars, historians, curators gather and really debate how to show this. And actually it was, somehow I assumed that, because that's what I was thinking too, but it wasn't about chronology, it wasn't about the region, but it was purely architecture typology. So they just have, you know, sports buildings or public buildings or infrastructure, and I think these are the kind of the sort of become basis of what you can do. For me, one thing I mentioned was I want to do research together with Ondo, Korean flow heating system. I think that's what impressed Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, he saw that this stolen palace was in Tokyo when he was coming 1916 to...
Baron Okuda or whatever.
Yeah. And because at the time, when we were finishing the catalog, South Korea announced that we're going to apply for UNESCO World Heritage, this technology. And I think that's a fascinating thing, because UNESCO usually associated with Kaesong become UNESCO World, a specific site, but this is a technology, and it wouldn't be really a shame that it's only South Korean claims that. And also both during the process of modernity, Korea had their own apartment like traditional way, and North Korea also, because a lot of elite study in Russia, so they had this kind of Russian-style fireplace in the apartment. And then Kim Il-sung at a certain point, what are you doing? Change to, we have the best system in the world. Things like that. So it would be very interesting to trace back just very specific sort of things that we can talk about. And then slowly expand, maybe. That's, yeah. And Kim Soo-gun, I think it's we had actually heavily featured him, so I was very happy. Finally.
I have some material, I will use it in the future.
Yes. You should, you know about the Pompidou project?
No.
It's in the book. Yeah. Pompidou entry, opposite of Renzo Piano. It's a true visionary.
One last question, maybe?
Okay.
Oh, there. On the left.
Good eyes.
Yeah. You have mentioned about historical architecture buildings in Korea and Kim Soo-gun's work, and you said Korean architecture should be maintained in a long term from now on. So in this historical sense, in Korean architecture, how's your project's direction, and what do you promote as an architect in Korean architecture history?
You were asking about historical architecture in Korea and his position?
Yeah, in the sense of Korean historical architecture, and what do you promote and what is your direction?
Old traditional houses and so on?
I mean, like your...
What's left?
Your place in the historical...
yeah, where is your place and your direction?
Where do you see yourself fitting into the history?
I don't know. That's my place to talk about. No, but I think it's I think me generation-wise, as I mentioned, I was the only one in the class. Now 10 of them. I think almost I was kind of beginning of this what come after this avalanche of this globalized sort of a generation. It really I'm very hopeful. Although this ironically there are challenges, there are less and less opportunities because of this kind of a post-bubble situation.
But hasn't it been a renaissance in Korean architecture, at least in terms of the media? The last 15 years, we've just been seeing fantastic work. That
I think that's in a way maybe exaggerated, maybe, but because we're humble.
It's just the media.
No, but I think Korea is impressing me because unlike in Japan is an exception. You know, they started from Meiji, sort of this thing. 1860s, young Japanese boys, they all go to Germany, and in Korea, it's the modernity also. Partly this Lee Sang, he was 4 years older than Kenjo Danke. He could have become. I mean, he has that much talent. I know from his drawings and writings. And it's only recent, maybe almost 100 years after Japan, when we start voluntarily articulate ourselves, and really modernity is not like this involuntary process, but also we had this kind of a long-term hangover. I think some of the images I show this like nationalistic, but then it's every Asian country does come out of this kind of colonial state after the Second War had exactly the same symptom. This crazy roofs and then this kind of really conflicted period. So I think I don't think I'm that generation. It's actually up to my uncle generation. Kim Soo-gun, of course, pioneered that, and he was exception. Too bad he passed away very young, when he was 55. But I'm hopeful because I think we're distanced enough that but it's a quite. I mean, still, I think we have a long way to go.
All right. Great. Thanks
Okay.
so much, Min.
Okay.